This is a Fox News alert on taking another stab at health care reform. President Trump insisting that the effort to repeal and replace Obamacare is still alive and well, saying he actually sees a deal within months. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Shannon Bream. Good morning.
Nice to see you. Good morning to you. I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning at home, at work, on your mobile device, wherever you're watching us today. The president vowing he will have the votes to get it passed next time, saying he thinks that Senator Rand Paul will come around.
I think Rand will be there for us. You know, he was there for me 2 times before for a plan that isn't as good. I like Rand Paul a lot, and I think he'll be there for us. He's a good guy, and he wants what's good also for the party. So I think Rand will be there.
Speaking of which, Senator Rand Paul standing by with his reaction on that pitch in a moment. But first, let's go to Mike Emanuel to figure out what the next steps are in this process. And Mike, what does happen next?
Well, Bill, I was told last night that Senators Lindsey Graham and Bill Cassidy, the guys behind the Graham-Cassidy plan that they tried to get across the finish line this week, that they would be going to the White House today to meet with President Trump to talk about strategy. Our colleague John Roberts is saying that meeting should take place in about 90 minutes or so. The last time we heard from both of those senators, they sounded committed to getting this done.
We're going to fulfill our promise to repeal and replace to the American people. We're going to improve health care for you, because at the end of the day, that's the only promise that matters.
Well, to be clear, through events that are under our control and not under our control, we don't have the votes.
Bottom line, they could not get to 50 Republicans saying yes on health care reform this week. They are hopeful that after tax reform, they'll be able to get there. But the question is, what makes some of those no votes turn to yes, Bill?
Yeah, Chuck Schumer, he's had a lot to say about this yesterday. Is he and other Democrats, are they claiming victory at this point?
There seems to be a sense of relief on the Democrat side, Bill. They were worried that if Republicans stayed unified, there was essentially nothing they could do to stop this effort. So they are saying that they expect Republicans to continue this fight.
We're not out of the woods by any means, and until Trump care is finally set aside, we will not stop fighting back, because this last one was the worst version yet.
We hope we can move forward and improve health care, not engage in another battle to take it away from people, because they will fail once again if they try.
Democrats have been pushing for a return to those bipartisan talks with Tennessee Senator Lamar Alexander, a Republican, and Patty Murray, who you just heard from, a senator from Washington State, to try and come up with a bipartisan fix of Obamacare. We will see if those talks resume. Bill?
Okay, more to come. Thanks. Mike Emanuel leading our coverage there on Capitol Hill. Shannon.
Let's talk to one of the key players in this whole thing, Senator Rand Paul. Welcome. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
Okay, so on the last measure, Cassidy Graham, you were a no. So how do you get to yes on whatever's coming next?
Well, the first thing is Graham-Cassidy was not repeal. It was sort of fake repeal put forward, but it wasn't repeal. I've been putting forward an alternative that I think is going to be acted on in the next couple of weeks. Graham-Cassidy probably will never be acted on, but I can tell you that the White House is excited about, and my alternative is to let individuals buy across state lines through health associations, and we believe the president can do this and will do this through basically a regulatory change or a reinterpretation of a law from the 1970s. So this is good news. We think millions of people are now going to be allowed to get insurance across state lines, inexpensive insurance, insurance that covers what they want it to cover, and this is going to be a huge step forward for the health insurance problems that we have in our country.
Okay, you say it's a first step. Obviously, there are still things to be addressed, taxes, mandates, those kinds of things. So where do you go next? Even if you give consumers the power to buy across state lines, what about those lingering issues?
Well, I think this is a big first step. We're talking about millions of people buying across state lines and also millions of people having access to inexpensive insurance. The big part of the problem in healthcare has been in the individual market. If you're a plumber or a carpenter, an accountant, pest control, some kind of small business, these are the people who worry about their spouse getting sick and losing their insurance or their rates going up. I'm going to let every one of them, about 11 million people, buy across state lines and join associations. The president and I have been working on this. This is a real free market alternative to Graham-Cassidy. Graham-Cassidy was just a big government reshuffling of Obamacare, but it kept the Obamacare taxes and spending in place. My plan costs $0 and is basically legalizing something. It's giving people the freedom of choice, but it could go a long way towards fixing the problems we have. Then maybe we don't have to go back to a big government solution like Graham Cassidy.
But if it leaves some of those other things in place that we talked about, the taxes, the mandates, the regulations, the requirements for employers, would you support further legislation that would scale back those kinds of things? And if this doesn't get done miraculously by Saturday with 51 votes, are you going to get any Democrats to weigh in with you on that?
There's probably been no more vocal opponent in Washington than myself against Obamacare. I have called repeatedly and voted repeatedly for real repeal. So what I would say is yes, I'm ready to vote now. There were parts of Graham Cassidy that were repeal. Repeal of the individual mandate, employer mandate, let's vote on it now. Expansion of HSAs, health savings accounts, let's vote on that now. Giving governors waivers, let's vote on that now. The main thing I opposed in Graham Cassidy was that they kept the Obamacare spending and just reshuffled it from Democrat states to Republican states. That was not an answer, and it's sort of petty partisanship, and it was big government, and it was fake repeal. But yes, there are parts that we could vote on, and I've met with people, the White House and the Senate leadership, and said, I'm ready to vote today if they'll put forward something that is simply a repeal bill.
I mean, you know that's never going to happen, at least not in the current framework. I mean, as much as you are a critic of the Affordable Care Act, of Obamacare, whatever folks want to call it, for you, is it about if you can't get a vote for a full repeal, that you're not going to vote for anything short of that? Or is there some wiggle room in there?
Well, that's actually not really true. I've already voted for several partial repeals, and I will vote for partial repeal. I promised full repeal, and that's what I'm for, and that's what the voters were promised. And you want to know why they're unhappy in Alabama? Not because we didn't just do something, but because we didn't do what we promised, which was real full repeal. But will I vote for partial repeal? Yeah, I already have. And so I want real repeal. I'm just not voting to replace Obamacare with a Republican version of a big government redistribution that keeps all the Obamacare taxes and spending in place. That's fake repeal, and I'm not going to vote for that.
Okay, a tweet from the president. He says, we will have the votes for health care, but not for the reconciliation deadline of Friday, after which we need 60. Get rid of filibuster rule. Leadership on both sides of the aisle says no way, they're not going to do it. It's a tool for the minority, which the Republicans at some point will once again be in the minority. It's the only tool the Republicans would have in that space. The Democrats as minority have to resist the tyranny of the majority. Where are you on filibuster?
Right. You know, I think the filibuster serves liberty in the sense that it doesn't allow legislation to move forward too quickly. Over our 250-year history, really, the Constitution was about preserving liberty, so it made the process and the wheels of Congress move slowly, purposely to preserve liberty. All legislation doesn't lead to liberty, so all legislation is not something we want to happen. So I'm still for the filibuster. But the filibuster didn't stop health care. What stopped health care was simply this. Republicans who promised to vote for real repeal no longer are for real repeal. That's a question they need to take up with their voters at home.
Yeah, and many of them will have to do that facing the voters in 2018. Senator and physician Rand Paul, always good to see you.
Thank you.
Interesting conversation with the president forthcoming, right? Breaking news from the U.S. Capitol on the floor of the House of Representatives. Steve Scalise, the majority whip out of Louisiana, shot on a baseball field more than 3 months ago, has returned to Capitol Hill. We expect to see him momentarily. We expect him to take part in several votes today, possibly, as well as deliver an address from the floor of the House. So we have not seen him publicly, just a few pictures here and there. Apparently, he did an interview this week with 60 Minutes that will air on Sunday night. But at age 51, shot through the hip, the bullet lodged inside of his body, did not exit. It caused extensive internal bleeding, and it led to numerous surgeries. He's been in inpatient care for more than 3 months, but very soon, as he said, he wants to go home to Louisiana, and that's a moment he cannot wait to happen. But first, before that takes place, we're going to see him live on the floor of the House. So this is a very big moment when you talk about infighting, you talk about partisanship. This is one of these moments that we're going to watch together live where everybody's going to come together. So Steve Scalise momentarily.
It'll be a big moment. I mean, we saw people across partisan lines praying together for him and wishing him well, saying things have to change. The rhetoric has to change. It's always a tough part to interpret into reality once the tragedy fades.
We were sitting here that day on June 14th in the morning and you really did not know the full scale of the shooting. The shooter had driven in from Illinois. He was shot and killed by the security detail that had been traveling with Steve Scalise to that baseball field. And this was right before a congressional baseball game that everybody looks forward to every year. And this shooter found his position and did the damage that he did. And he is dead, Scalise is alive, and Scalise lives on to deliver his message.
Yeah, that
today.
morning was certainly a very emotional one, as we heard from winded members running away from that scene who'd been there, who themselves felt like they had just escaped being targets themselves. And as you mentioned, the fact that he is part of GOP leadership, he had security detail. Had he not been there, it could have been a different story.
Some heroes out there that day.
Yeah, good to see him back.
So stay tuned. We'll take you back there to the floor of the House when that moment happens. In the meantime, new details on this top security leak. What reality winner, that's her name, told the FBI when asked about a classified report and how she got the documents out. Stay tuned.
Plus, tax reform moves forward as the House Freedom Caucus gives the latest plan a thumbs up. That voting block is a huge one for getting this done. Congressman Jim Jordan's on the committee. He joins us next.
We're not only moving forward on tax reform, as I told you many months ago that we would be doing, but we're actually being aggressive and bold about it.
Congressman Steve Scalise returning to the House floor today for the first time months after he was gunned down at a practice for a charitable congressional baseball game. He is making his way around the Hill there and will take to the floor shortly. It is a big day, a big return for him. We're going to take you there live as it happens. In the meantime, Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan is a member of the Freedom Caucus. We want to talk to him about taxes, but also about his colleague returning. Your thoughts on this big day?
Oh, it's a great day. And I think Stevie's going to be walking right through here in just a few minutes, which will be, just unbelievable to see because he's such a good man and such a tough and courageous individual. So it'll be one of those special moments for the House.
Well, and he's been through so much, multiple surgeries, therapies, all kinds of things to return there. And in the wake after of that event back in June, there was a lot of goodwill. Do you feel like any of that's carried over across the aisle?
Well, we'll see. We're not getting the things done for the American people that they elected us to do and that we told them we were going to do. So that hasn't happened yet, namely health care. We're starting that process on tax reform. So, but I think you'll see the House come together here in just a few minutes when Steve walks on the floor and addresses the entire body.
All right, let's talk about tax reform. So simplifying the code, cutting the rates, dropping some deductions, all kinds of things the president has ruled out. Critics say they still need to see more. But in the meantime, you had penned a letter or a piece that was in the Wall Street Journal, worried about the fact that this was being done in secret and holding back on whether there'd be a conservative consensus behind this. Now, have you seen enough? It sounds like you have to convince you.
Yeah, we wanted a framework that actually was going to answer three big questions. Does it actually cut taxes for families? Does it simplify the tax code? And will it be a code that's now conducive to producing economic growth? We think the answers to those three questions, based on the framework we've been given, is a yes to all of them. And specifically, we now know what the corporate rate is going to be, what the small business rate, how many brackets are going to be on the personal side. So those were some of the details and specifics we wanted before we were willing to move forward. Our group is strongly in favor of this now. We're going to support the budget and move forward, hopefully to get tax reform and tax cuts for American families here real soon.
Is it a totally different mood this time around because health care was so divisive? I mean, Republicans had a really hard time getting on the same page. Do you feel now Republicans are united? We know you as a leader of one of the conservative groups is on board, but do you think this is going to go across the board?
I do, and it's why we held out until we got some specifics, because if you remember with health care, we passed a budget for this current fiscal year thinking we were going to get clean repeal, and that's not what the House leadership rolled out. So we said we're not going to make that same mistake again. We want to know a better idea what this tax reform package is going to look like before we move ahead with the budget. We think, again, it's going to be good. The framework is good, and actually families are going to be able to keep more of their money. So time to move forward, time to get it done.
All right, here is what Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, says. It seems that President Trump and Republicans have designed their plan to be cheered in the country clubs and the corporate boardrooms. He went on to call it, on the Senate floor, wealth fair. Not welfare, wealth fair. Your response?
No, I mean, come on. It's about letting families keep increasing, doubling the standard deduction, lowering the rates, only having 3 brackets, bringing down the corporate rate, which we know produces economic growth, which we know helps every single family across this country. So we had just some basic concepts. Make sure families get to keep more of their money and construct a tax code that's going to produce growth. Again, we think this outline, this framework does that. That's why we're moving forward. The Democrats are going to say what they're going to say. They always do. Let's cut taxes for American families. Let's grow our economy so we can have the kind of opportunity that we need in this great country.
What is your perception about how this will impact the debt and deficit as a package, based on what you know now?
Yeah, you have to get growth. Think about the last 10 years. We were bumping along at about a percent and a half growth rate, particularly during the Obama years. The debt doubled during the Obama years. To deal with a debt of this magnitude, $20 trillion, you've got to get to 3.5, 4% annual growth rate. You cannot do that with our current tax code. So this is all about growth, which you have to have in order to deal with a debt of that size. So we think this is the right place to go. We think over time, when you get that kind of growth, you're going to get additional revenue to the Treasury, and you're going to be able to begin to deal with this huge debt burden we now face.
Well, you know, there are plenty of critics, some on the far right, some on the left, many of them, who say that when you give these tax cuts, they don't believe it's a proven formula to grow the economy, and that somehow that money's got to show up. They're also asking questions about which tax breaks are going to survive and which aren't. And now comes this business of lobbying, which is going to go hardcore on the Hill, something Americans by and large say they don't have a taste for. But who's going to ultimately win and lose, do you think?
Every time tax cuts are tried, they work. You, over time, get additional dollars to the Treasury because it spurs economic growth. We know this worked in the Kennedy years. We know this worked the last time we did it in the Reagan years. It will work again. It will unleash the dynamic components of the American economy and the entrepreneurs across this great country. That's what this is about. And then you have to do that to deal with a debt the size that we're talking about, a $20 trillion debt. This is the right way to go. We need to just get it done. And more importantly, or maybe most importantly, this is what we told the American people we were going to do last November. We were going to cut their taxes. We told them we were going to get economic growth and job creation happening. So let's get done what we said we were going to do.
Well, and we'll watch to see if you get bipartisan buy-in on that as well. Enjoy the day with your colleague returning there to the floor. Congressman Jim Jordan, always good to see you.
Thank you.
Keeping a close eye on it. When it happens, we'll bring it to you live, certainly. 20 past the hour now. Senate investigators calling on Facebook and other tech giants to testify. They want to know about Russia's attempt to influence the election through social media. How will they respond on Chaffetz standing by next to answer those questions also.
Plus, the former First Lady slamming women who voted for President Trump, saying if you're a woman, you should have voted for Hillary Clinton, or you don't like yourself. Her panel is going to debate it.
We know why she lost. It's obvious. I looked at Hillary Clinton. She was a treasure trove. She was like a treasure box of negative Hillary information with arms and legs.
Right now, injured Congressman Steve Scalise is on his way to recovery. He is meeting with House Speaker Paul Ryan. He has tweeted, "I'm back," with a picture. As he returns to the Hill, he has been through grueling months since that attack, shooting at congressional baseball practice months ago back in June. Several others involved there. He took the worst of it by far. There were others injured and who have continued to recover, including his security detail. Brave Capitol Hill police officers who were out there really put themselves on the line. They continue to recover as well. This is his first time back to the Hill. And as soon as that happens, we will keep an eye on him, and we'll get you there live.
Fox News confirming that former NSA contractor, reality winner, accused of leaking a classified report on Russian hacking to influence the election. She told the FBI she smuggled it out of the NSA headquarters in her pantyhose. Fox News contributor, former Congressman Jason Chaffetz here to talk about this. Docs in your socks, Sandy Berger. I mean, now the pantyhose. If we see Steve Scalise, we're going to interrupt our conversation. I'm certainly that you understand that. But when was the last time? What's the last time you talked to Steve, or what do you reflect on today?
Well, you know, LSU was playing BYU in a place that I went to, and Steve and I chatted about that. There was no way I was taking a bet because LSU was going to kill BYU, and they did. But he's in good spirits, and it is really, truly a remarkable story, that what he and his family have gone through, the pain and the rehab and the surgeries, and if not for the heroic effort by a couple of Capitol Hill police officers, you would have seen a lot more people shot and probably killed. But it is an amazing emotional moment for him to get together, and there will be not a dry eye in the place.
Well, we are on standby for that, so please understand if the interruption comes. What do you think should happen to 25-year-old reality winner?
Reality should be behind bars for as long as possible. You can't unilaterally decide to make classified material not classified and just release it out. You're going to get people killed. And I wish there was more consistency from our government in prosecuting these types of cases. But she should not be released, and that she be given this bail that she's trying to get. And I want to see her behind bars for as long as possible.
No, the reason why this is important is because if the Russians attempted or were successful hacking some of the databases for voting software suppliers, that's a big deal. We need to know about it. On the other hand, you've got members of Congress who want to talk to the before hearings on Capitol Hill. Now, President Trump's tweeting that, social media is against him, and Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook fired back on this way. Campaign spent hundreds of millions advertising online to get their messages out even further. That's 1,000 times more than any problematic ads we've found. He continued. Trump says Facebook's against him. Liberals say we help Trump. They're upset about ideas and content they don't like. That's what running a platform for all ideas looks like, end quote. How do we manage this for the next?
Mark Zuckerberg says that the Russians were not influential in the election, although he did take their money. And I think Congress, in a bipartisan way, needs to look at that same documentation and try to figure out, have been trying to manipulate the election, particularly from outside of our country, and make some sort of, they put up ads online. You don't have the same disclosure requirements that you do if you put them in other types of venues. And so Congress is going to be looking this, and not just Facebook. I think you're going to called up before Capitol Hill over the next 12 months.
I think it's Google and really Twitter in addition to Facebook, and said investigators want to know about all that. Where does this go, though? Again, it's a tough thing to manage, and I don't know whether it's dictated out of Washington or not.
Well, again, I think disclosure is going to see. I mean, you got Senator Langford, who's very savvy on these, is savvy on this issue, who's been looking at this. It is about disclosure, and you do want to know what's going on with these foreign entities and their ability to come in and influence an election, or at least try to influence an election. Zuckerberg saying it was minuscule compared to everything else, but Senate's got to look at it as well.
It's very interesting considering how many people are online every day, and social media is such a big part of so many lives now. So we will follow it with your help. Thank you, Jason, for coming back today. Jason Chaffetz there.
Thanks, Bill.
You bet. Shannon, what's next?
Well, House Majority Leader, actually the House Whip, Steve Scalise is back to work today. He has just wrapped up a meeting with Speaker Paul Ryan. We are told he may be heading to the House. Expect him to speak there this morning. Can't imagine what that's going to be like, but we're going to take you there live as that happens. Plus, President Trump pushing his ambitious agenda with a 1-2 punch, touting his tax reform plan and saying a health care deal will be reached within months. Will he have the votes that have eluded him so far? We're going to talk to White House Legislative Affairs Director next.
We're doing our job here in the House, and we're rooting for our friends in the Senate to get this stuff done. We're really disappointed in health care, but we still got a chance of getting a lot of these big things done.
President Trump voicing optimism on health care reform, saying he will have a bill on his desk in a matter of months. From the White House, Legislative Director Mark Schwartz in our bureau in Washington. Sir, thank you for coming back to America's Newsroom. I want to put this in simple language. Why did he deliver the cuts about health care being revived?
Well, Bill, I think sometimes politicians in Washington are a little bit slow hearing the cry of the American people, and they've cried out for several years about the need to repeal Obamacare. They did in 2010, electing Republicans to the House, 2014, electing them to the Senate, and now giving us the White House. They want us to deliver on this. The president is committed to repealing Obamacare. Where we are is that several senators feel like we ran out of time. They've coalesced around the Graham-Cassidy concept of taking Washington out of the picture and putting the dollars back at the states, giving them flexibility to run plans that's best for their constituents. But we now have run out of time on that. We think we have the votes. It'll likely, though, be part of a budget reconciliation early next year. And so the president is agreeing on a concept. Now we just need a little bit more time to deliver on it.
He thinks he can get Rand Paul to vote for this, right? I mean, he pretty much said that. We played that earlier today. And Graham and Cassidy will be at the White House, I believe, in about an hour today. But 30 minutes ago, Rand Paul told Shannon this about those prospects.
The main thing I opposed in Graham Cassidy was that they care spending and just reshuffled it from Democrat states to Republican states. That was not an answer, and sort of petty partisanship, and it was big government, and it was fake repeal. But yes, there are parts that we could vote on, and I've met with people, the White House and the Senate leadership, and said, I'm ready to vote today if they'll put forward something that is simply a repeal bill.
Okay, now, that doesn't sound like a yes. There are 10 caveats in that answer right there. So what don't we get?
Okay, we're working with Rand on several things. One is an associated health care plan is something he's advocated legislatively that we think we can do from the executive branch. We're still optimistic in earning Rand's support. We're disappointed we couldn't get it this time. We think when you're talking about one of the biggest in generations, actually repealing the individual mandate and the employer mandate, and also very important to Senator Paul, he prides himself on being a pro-life senator. This was our best chance to add life legislation that ensured taxpayers were not funding abortion, and the dollars would have been provided through the states to do that. So we're very disappointed that Rand wasn't supportive this go round. But the process argument, I think, is really one that's been Senator McCain and Senator Murkowski have said with a different process they could get supportive. So I think that our focus is really looking to get the 50 votes that's more likely to include McCain, Murkowski, and we'll see what others we can earn as we move forward.
So you do the math and we'll try and follow along. But the point of this is that health care reform is not dead. That's the message the president wants to deliver on that, and we'll see whether or not he's right. Now, on tax cuts, quickly here, Paul Ryan told Sean Hannity this last night about the plan that was made public yesterday.
This is the kind of plan that Donald Trump ran on, that House Republicans ran on, and yes, we're going to get this done. This is about economic growth. It's about bigger paychecks. It's about more jobs. It's about a fairness system in our tax code. So we're really excited about this. That's why we spent all this time working with the president and, yes, working with the Senate and the House to make sure we're on the same page so we work off this common outline, this common framework to go from here to get this done.
So that was from last night. Wall Street Journal opinion page, final line reads like this. The challenge now is to sell it better than health reform, resist the special pleaders, and pass it by the end of the year. Can you complete all three?
Bill, that is our ambition. That's our goal. We need to do it by the end of the year. The American people have suffered for too long. The last 8 years, 8% average growth. That is the worst growth of any president since the Depression and Herbert Hoover. The American economy has suffered for far too long. American families have hurt. We need to reform so that we can keep jobs here in America. Our corporate tax structure is so outdated that you have seen time and again companies moving their plants overseas because of a different tax structure. We need to bring those jobs back, and it's about time that we start turning the economy and getting growth injected into it.
By the end of the year? Yes.
Bill, we plan to get it done by the end of the year.
You come back anytime, okay? We're short on time today. A lot of breaking news, you bet. Mark Short there live in our Washington Bureau. Thank you.
And we continue to await the arrival of injured and now recovering Congressman Steve Scalise on the House floor. Our own Mike Emanuel is there on Capitol Hill watching and waiting as we do. Let's check in with him to see what he knows as we await this timing. It's a big day, Mike.
Well, absolutely, Shannon. Good morning to you. We got a tip, and so we've been here in Statuary Hall waiting for his joyous return to Capitol Hill 3.5 months after he was shot at that congressional baseball practice. A lot of smiles here. A lot of lawmakers are wondering what all the buzz is, and when they've been told that it's Scalise returning to the House chamber, I saw Congressman John Lewis, the civil rights icon, his face lit up and said, oh, that's wonderful. And so I doubt there will be a dry eye in the House chamber when Scalise addresses the House chamber. They're expecting some votes. We ran into House Speaker Paul Ryan short time ago, and he had just met with Mr. Scalise, and he seemed overcome with emotion. They were worried that their dear friend was going to die after that shooting incident at the baseball practice, and so it's been a very long road for him. A lot of infections, a lot of medical procedures. Scalise has described it as basically doctors had to put him back together like Humpty Dumpty. He told 60 Minutes that they had to put steel plates in to reinforce the shattered bones from that one gunshot to the left hip. And so a triumphant return to Capitol Hill 3.5 months after that very tragic incident, but a lot of smiles here, anticipating hearing from him and seeing him and perhaps shaking his hand or giving him a hug. A lot of folks saying that, who have met with him, say that he is thrilled to be back, very excited, and him out on the balcony tweeting that I'm back. And so a great anticipation here for Steve Scalise's return to the U.S. House this morning. Shannon?
Yeah, and whatever the gunman who is now dead intended, all of his targets survived, and they have come through this in a way that has built so much goodwill for the police officers, for the others who were wounded, for the heroes who showed up that day, and truly saved Steve Scalise's life. And now, as you said, when he enters in, you know, probably he and Congressman Lewis haven't voted alike on a lot of important things, but to hear that Congressman Lewis is across the aisle, and yet, as everyone else will be there today, praising Steve Scalise, his fight to recover, whatever that gunman intended, he's not going to get that today, Mike.
No question about it, Shannon. As a person of faith, obviously, a lot of people have been praying for Steve Scalise. He has responded to those prayers. A lot of prayers have been answered by his return here to Capitol Hill. A lot of people didn't think it was going to happen. Remember the doctor at MedStar Washington saying that death was imminent when he arrived at the hospital 3.5 months ago. There were infections, and there were concerns that those infections could lead to potentially death. And so a young guy with a young family, somebody who is known for his smile here on Capitol Hill for Democrats and Republicans. I can't tell you how many times I've seen Steve Scalise come bouncing through here with a big smile on his face, greeting all that he meets. And so a joyous day here on Capitol Hill, Shannon.
All right, Mike Emanuel, our chief congressional correspondent, we will check back with you and keep watch on that. Thank you so much, Mike.
Just imagine the rehab that he's gone through trying to walk again. And wow, yeah, tough indeed. Apparently, he did an interview this week with 60 Minutes Alaire on Sunday night, and he said about Louisiana, "I can tell you I cannot wait till the day that I get back home." In a way, he's coming home today, so we're going to see him live in a moment here on the floor of the House. So don't move. In a moment here, the former First Lady Michelle Obama speaking out about voters in last year's election. What she is saying about women who voted for President Trump. Kind of surprising on this. And we're going to debate that. Could she be overlooking some of the real reasons for the outcome of what we watched last November? That's next.
She has no self-awareness. Maybe she needs a class or something that we can send her to, because there's no accountability, and it reinforces every time why she lost.